it's not set up on. There it is. Now it goes remote.
Yeah, just takes a minute for it.
Hello, YouTubers. Here we are again for another edition of Smitty's Stories. Just to follow up in the last one, when actually the second last one, when you were talking about how you met our mother. Scott's here again. You may remember him from working on the cane. So, you are a cowboy, just not wearing the hat at the moment.
Yeah.
Grew up with horses. The woman that you stole away from somebody else you was engaged to is terribly allergic to horses and grass and dust. And she married a cowboy.
Yeah.
Some serious charm going on there.
Oh yeah. Well, right now we've been together 64 years.
Yeah, 64 years.
Yeah.
And has she ever ridden a horse?
Oh yes.
About how many times? Probably counted on one hand.
No, but there wouldn't be much left over. I would say half a dozen.
Half a dozen times in 60. That's not one every 10 years, maybe. Okay, that's cool. Now,
Well, that was. Yeah, they were pretty close together. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It was. Most of that was before we were married, I guess.
oh, so she was just putting up with it to keep you happy.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, we know what that's like. Okay, so there is a game that goes around on social media where it's a list of things and you check off the things either yes or no or the number of times and you score it at the bottom. Things like, have you ever been arrested? Have you ever jumped out of an airplane? Have you ever, got a tattoo? And we're going to come back to you because you do have a tattoo, but you've never jumped out of an airplane. And I don't know whether you've ever been arrested or not, but we don't need to. Oh,
No.
spoilers. Okay, but have you ever ridden a horse full speed into the side of a house in downtown Main Street in the village of Cumberland?
Yes.
All right, now there's the story. How did it all start?
Well, I was just out for a ride, and that horse he was a tough little rascal. He wasn't very big, but he'd take a notion to do something, and in spite of everything you tried to talk him into not doing, he would go ahead and do it anyway. And we were heading west up the main street of Cumberland, and he wanted to turn left at the corner, and I talked him out of that, and he just shook his head and he started to run, and when we came to the next corner to the left, he wanted to go there, and I was emphatic and said no, so he ducked into the driveway in spite of me, and by that time he was running blind, and we hit the side of the house, between the corner of the house and the window that was went down to ground level, and it was a log building, and we hit it hard enough that it rattled the windows, and it knocked him off his feet, and he fell, and I would never let go of him. I kept a hold of the reins, and by the time he got back on his feet, I had a hold of him. And I found out later that the lady that lived in that house had just come back that day from spending some time in the hospital, and she was upstairs in bed, and she felt the house shake. Didn't know what happened, and I didn't tell anybody about it either.
Now,
Obviously, somebody knows about it.
So, when he talks about a horse running blind, what does that mean for people who aren't horse people? How come he was running blind?
Well, when a horse is not quite like a mule won't run into anything that it can see coming. But when a horse runs blind, he doesn't see where he's going. He just runs. It's instinctive flight or fight. And instinctively, a horse flights because it's a prey animal. Still is.
So what would you be doing with the horse at that time? Like bending his head back sideways?
Oh, I had his head hooked right around his neck bent, and when we hit that house, the first thought I had was I broke his neck, or he broke his neck, because he hit hard enough that, but it was mostly his shoulder, I guess, because if he'd have hit with his neck, he certainly would have broke his neck.
Would this be the same horse? Like some people have dogs that like to chase cars at the curb, but you had a horse that liked to chase the bus going down the road. Would this be the same horse?
It was the same one. Yeah.
So he wanted to chase. You happened to be on his back, and he decided he was going to give that bus a run for his money.
Yeah. And some years later.
Oh well, let's do the first part. So tell us what happened in that.
We were going west up the main street of Cumberland, and the bus had stopped at the bus stop to either discharge or load passengers, and it was just starting to pull away real slow when I came across the bus, and I was going up on the left-hand side of the bus, and as the bus pulled away, I was up by the driver's window, and he looked over to his left to make sure that he was clearing the traffic.
Did a shoulder check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as he pulled away, we stayed with him. Like the faster he went, that pony loved to run, and it didn't matter if there was competition or not. He would run. And we followed that bus, I guess, for a block and a half before the bus was ahead of us far enough that I could pull in behind the bus. And then it headed up the hill out of town.
Which is east, leaving the village of Cumberland.
Yeah, leaving the village of Cumberland. And there was quite a sharp grade. And the bus had to shift down before it got to the top of the hill, and by that time we'd caught up to, because we didn't slow down, we had caught up to the bus again. And when we broke over the brow of the hill, we were right at the hind bumper of the bus. And we were turning in the driveway at the top of the hill anyway, so we let the bus go.
The horse knew where he was going.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then, years later,
I was coming back from Toronto on the bus, and I got talking to the bus driver, and he said to me, your ticket says Cumberland. I said, yes. He said, I was driving a bus from Montreal, scheduled bus from Montreal to Ottawa one time, and he said, I was leaving Cumberland when there was a fellow on a horse decided to race the bus. And he said, he stayed with us for quite a while. And he said, by the time we broke over the top of the hill, he said, everybody on the bus was standing up, looking out the back window and cheering. And I started laughing. And I said to him, yeah, you were just pulling away from the Lancaster's general store when we were right up at your window. He said, it was you? I said, yeah. If that was the only time you ever had a horse race your bus, I said, that little horse would run. It didn't matter if he had competition or not. He'd take a notion to run, and he would run. Yeah. And he could run too, little sucker.
So which horse was that?
That was the pony, that red pony.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that I kept on the lot right
Yep.
next door.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he would run around that lot. Take a notion to run, right? There were skid marks when he turned the corner at the front of the house. That is, the skid marks through underneath the wire. Yeah.
He had a lot of energy.
Oh,
So we got a lot more stories, including some horse stories. One of them is about a tattoo. We're not going to get into it right now. That'll be in an upcoming episode. About a horse tattoo, actually. So heads up to young is relative, young Becky and her mom Rose. They'll be looking forward to hearing a story about the tattoo he's worn more than 20 years now, 22 years. So we'll get into that
yeah.
in a future episode. Thank you all for watching. And is it